In 2016 and 17, I was working on the ground with Syrian and Kurdish refugee youth in a camp in Greece called Rizona. And so for those of you that don't know, in 2016 was really when the height of the Syrian crisis was deemed, and Europe kind of declared it a refugee crisis. And there were, hundreds of thousands of Syrian and Kurdish refugees trapped inside Greece. And so I was on the ground working with the youth there to help them build a youth space and build confidence in themselves and their skills to continue their education as they waited to figure out where they were going. And so the individuals I worked with were never going to stay in Greece. They were always going to be transitioned to another country in Europe. The work that I did on the ground and building those relationships and helping the youth in such a crisis context was really emotional for me. And knowing that they were going to eventually move on and be resettled in another country, and really hoping that the individuals they met when they landed in those next countries would be willing to dedicate the time and be kind and empathetic to cultivate those youth and help them, achieve the dreams that they had for themselves. I came back to Green Bay after working inside of Rizona and wanted to be on the receiving end of the refugee journey here in my own hometown, because I wasn't going to be able to be there in Europe to receive any of the young men and women I was working with on the ground there, but I could do it here. And so I founded the United Resistors from that calling, kind of to see the full circle of it, and really help those recently resettled young women here in our own community find their voice and really help them to gain that confidence that they needed to achieve whatever dreams they had for themselves. So the United Resistors is a group of young Somali American women that really work to try to build a better, more inclusive Green Bay community for other refugee and immigrant populations. What I would love to share is that Green Bay is very diverse, and we need more women's voices from all sorts of populations. As someone who works in our public schools, I can tell you that we are very diverse, right? I'm in the elementary schools where we are seeing students of all backgrounds, and we don't have that same representation of women leaders in our community. And so there is a space for you, and we need you to step up. And some of the questions you can ask yourself are, what did I need to hear, or what did I need to see when I was, a child growing up in this community? And how can you be that for the next generation of young women to help them grow their confidence? Or what is it that you're passionate about that you need to speak up about in our community to help others grow more educated, or grow more active as far as advocacy or involvement? As a woman, working in education, I still don't feel qualified to speak on behalf of all women educators, because of course I have a very different experience as a white woman working in education. But I'll say, as someone who studied feminist theory, that there's a systemic issue in our education system with the understanding of the gender disparity in the teachers, primarily in elementary school. So I currently work in an elementary school, and across the nation, right, the majority of staff and teachers are female. And I worry about what that, messaging is for our youngest learners when it comes to whose responsibility is it to care for children and to educate the youngest learners, and what we are reinforcing when it comes to that gender dichotomy of, men are primarily seen in the professional sphere and are in a world that is comes with much more value and resources and pay. And women are often in the care industry, which is undervalued and underpaid and under-resourced. And I can't say that having more men in an elementary school setting as teachers and paras or, support staff would necessarily fix this, but I think it's worth that exploring to find out, because we keep seeing, as we fight later on in life for gender equality, we keep butting up against these issues. And I think it starts as we are teaching and modeling for our youngest learners, right, who they can become and what does work look like and who does work. My artifact is actually the t-shirt that I wore when I was on the ground in Greece, and it hasn't been washed because it has paint on the back of it of all the hands of the little preschoolers that I worked with for several months. So on top of working with youth, the joke is always that it doesn't matter if you're an American teenager or a Syrian teenager, you still don't get up until like noon. And so often I wouldn't be working with the youth until after lunch. And so in the mornings I would serve inside of the preschool that the organization I was working with ran every day. And working with the littlest hearts affected by such a large crisis, right? This huge war and violence, and the journey to come from Syria all the way to Greece, and then the precariousness of being in a camp and not really having that normal childhood. We were working with children 5 and under inside of our preschool, but every day for 2 hours, there was this sense of normalcy. And we really tried to provide that in that space. And this t-shirt is just mine alone. And, seeing the little hands and the names of the children that I worked with just always brings up a lot of memories for me. And it's something I hold really special. And I've stayed in touch with some of the families that then moved on to Germany and Sweden. And it just grounds me, I think, in that we can do so much, right? We can only do so much, but particularly when it comes to working with youth, they have a voice that they can share, right, what's going on. But some of our youngest students and our youngest hearts don't have that, right? These young children didn't know any other life oftentimes. And there's just something about that always just keeps me tied to this work and grounded in fighting for eventual peace, right? That yes, we can work on the issues that are here and the populations that have landed here and are resettled here. But I don't want to forget about the ultimate goal of really, we're trying to fight for peace everywhere so that we don't have these young 3-year-old and 4-year-old and 5-year-old kids that are stuck for years inside of a camp. That's no life, right? They were denied a proper education. Their parents were denied that kind of opportunity to be the provider. And so that has always stuck with me, and I keep it very close to my heart because it just drives a lot of the work that I do.